I am Bonnie Baritza. I'm one of the labor and employment attorneys here at Erickson and Sederstrom in Omaha, Nebraska. And I've been getting a lot of calls lately and hearing from a lot of people that there's been layoffs, there's been reductions in force. If you keep track of the news, you've probably heard about big companies around the country who are starting to do layoffs. And as part of that, a lot of times companies will offer a severance. And of course, they want you to sign a severance or separation agreement in order to receive that severance pay. And so that's usually the heart of a lot of questions that people have. What is this severance agreement? What am I being offered? What am I giving up if I accept it? Is this a good deal? Can I get more? And so wanted to talk about a number of those kinds of things. If you've received a severance offer, first question is, what is it? So a severance agreement is a legal contract. Employers will often offer them to employees after they've made a decision to do a round of layoffs or even just to terminate a smaller set or just one individual employee. It's a legal contract where an employer is offering you something that's going to be additional compensation in exchange for you entering the contract and giving up certain legal rights and taking on certain legal obligations. Severance agreement can have many clauses, many terms. It can be anywhere from a one-page, very simple document to something that's multiple pages long with lots of different clauses and things that you'll need to read carefully and go over. Any severance agreement is typically going to have 4 key parts. So, front and center, what an employee is going to be most interested in is what kind of compensation are you being offered to enter into the severance agreement? What kind of additional pay are you going to get even though you're being terminated? In addition to that, a lot of severance agreements will have some kind of non-compete clause. That's a clause where an employee is agreeing to not do certain things in the future that could be considered competition with their former employer. So that's also something that you're going to want to carefully understand, carefully read, because it can limit the kind of employment that you could take on in the future. Severance agreements will also typically have a confidentiality term. And in that kind of term, an employee is agreeing to keep things confidential that they may have learned or they may have developed while they were employed with the employer. Or it may be that the employer wants you to promise to keep confidential the fact that you've been offered a severance and are entering into the severance agreement. That kind of clause might also include a promise not to disparage your employer in the future. And what the employer is asking for there is your agreement not to say anything negative on social media or just out in the community about the employer going forward. And then fourth, always included in a severance agreement is going to be a release of claims. This is really what the employer is dangling the compensation and other benefits out there for you, because they want you to enter the release of claims so that you are giving up the right to bring a lawsuit or bring up any kind of legal claims that you had that may have arose during your time of employment. So those are the typical terms in a severance agreement. Employers vary in the amount of detail that they have in all of those, and it can include other terms that you'll want to make sure you read them carefully. Employees often want to know if they can receive more money, if they can negotiate something better in their severance agreement. And it depends on so many factors. So a good, experienced employment law attorney can review your severance agreement and talk about all of the circumstances of your employment and all of the circumstances of your termination to talk with you about whether there might be reasons to think that you could negotiate more. Sometimes you can, sometimes you're not successful. So employees often want to know if they should engage an attorney to review a severance agreement that's being offered. Oftentimes, the severance agreement itself will contain language advising employees to go consult with an attorney. And, it is a good idea to work with an attorney to review the document because, like I said, it's a legal contract. You're giving up legal rights. You may be taking on significant legal obligations. And it's a good idea to understand those fully and see if there's a potential to negotiate those more or if there's additional protections that might be added in.